The room was spinning before his eyes. Dennis entered the residence room and collapsed into a chair. A chart of a recently admitted patient lay on the table. He pushed it aside and ran his fingers through his hair, a bitter expression on his face. It had happened. For the first time in his short practice, a patient died right on the operating table. Denis Andreevich, the head surgeon, glanced into the residence room. Boris Vladimirovich approached closer and patted the young specialist on the shoulder. "It happens. Don't take it to heart. The patient sought help too late. We're not gods." "I know," Denis replied gloomily. He composed himself, straightened up, and pulled the outpatient card of the newly admitted patient closer to him. "Come to my office, I'll pour you a brandy. It'll help you relax a bit." "No, Boris Vladimirovich, I have to drive. Besides, I need to see the patient." Denis ruffled his wet hair again, brushed it to the side, and resolutely stood up from the chair. Boris Vladimirovich followed him out into the hallway, escorting him to the designated ward, and remarked, "I didn't make a mistake with you, Sobolev. You'll go far." "Thank you," Denis squeezed out, perceiving the compliment as a cruel mockery. The drawbacks of the profession no longer frightened him. Now he saw it all. Denis confidently entered the ward, scanning the patients, and then peered into the chart. "Vassilyeva, that's me." The woman immediately took a sitting position and stared at the doctor with all her eyes. He carefully studied the records, sitting down on a chair. Then he focused on the patient and froze. The woman's face seemed very familiar to him. She smiled. "Denis, is that you? Do you recognize me?" Denis read her last name again, and only then smiled back restrainedly. "Vassilyeva Lydia Antonovna, Olga Vassilyeva's mother, that same activist from the parent committee." "You've grown up," she surveyed Denis from head to toe with an admiring gaze. "Now it's clear why we don't have good surgeons in our city." Denis nodded, put on a serious face, intending to discuss the upcoming operation with Lydia Antonovna, but she beat him to it. "Your classmates organized another reunion on Saturday at the summer cafe on the waterfront. The same faces show up every year. And you, Denis, weren't invited?" "No," he replied curtly. Denis had long changed his number and severed all ties with his past life. "I don't have time for that. I have a lot of work." "Too bad. It's a shame. I can imagine how your classmates would have been delighted. You used to be a modest boy, not standing out. And now you've become so important, mastered a difficult profession, a desirable groom. Or did you get married?" "No." Denis furrowed his brows and immediately changed the subject. "Lydia Antonovna, is something bothering you right now? Lower back pain, discomfort when moving?" In the hospital, nobody knew about Denis's personal life. He actively avoided conversations on the topic, and his colleagues stopped bothering him with questions. The young nurses had come to accept that Denis Andreevich didn't respond to their longing gazes and seductive cleavage. He put all his energy into his work, and today he had to work doubly hard to distract himself from the unfortunate patient who died before his eyes. Denis anxiously waited for his shift to end. He wanted to go home and process this tragic incident in silence, but as soon as he approached his front door, he smelled something burning and rushed into the apartment, shocked. Without taking off his shoes, Denis walked into the kitchen and found Sonia there, sobbing over a burnt pan. "I just got distracted by a phone call," she whimpered, startled by Denis's tense gaze. "Sonia, can you stop with the experiments? Maybe you can use the old tried-and-true method. Make dumplings. That's it. I wanted to surprise you." She pouted her lips in offense and turned away. Denis looked at the burnt dish, still emitting smoke, and remarked, "I'm surprised, Sonia. You haven't tortured that poor chicken yet." He left the kitchen, feeling complete indifference towards her tears. They had long ceased to affect Denis, and sometimes even provoked irritation. Taking off his shoes at the doorstep, he headed for the shower to wash away the negative feelings of the day. Denis stood under the cold water for a long time, mentally forgiving himself for the patient's death. Then he put on a robe and returned to the kitchen. Hurt Sonia was cooking dumplings for him. "Pour me something stronger," he said to her back. Sonia hunched her shoulders and asked in surprise, "What?" "What you hide in the cabinet and sip while I'm on duty," he replied. Sonia hesitated, stammering, I... Sona, let's skip the silly excuses. Pour it, I had a difficult day." She let out a long sigh and reluctantly took out a bottle of brandy from its secret corner. A sheepish smile appeared on her guilty face when the last 50 grams ended up in Denis's glass. "And now I'm truly surprised," he muttered, piercing Sonia with his gaze. Then he raised his glass and said, "To your health, my dear." She blushed bright red and rushed to the stove. Almost all the water had evaporated and the dumplings had lost their original shape. "Thank you, but I'm not hungry," Denis informed her. watching her absent-minded movements. Another time, he would have cooked dinner himself, but not today. Today, he wanted peace. What? Sonia turned around, but Dennis had already disappeared from sight. Annoyed, she clenched her lips and chased after him. I cooked, I tried, and you...